so tired today, but I saw this tag and I wanted to do it. And sometimes when I am motivated to do something, I just gotta suck it up and do it anyway, or else it's not gonna get done. So I originally saw this tag from Rob from Rob is Doing Things, and you should check out his video with this tag. It was really fun to watch and I wanted to do it too, so now I am doing the nerdy narrative tag. The first prompt is science fiction, which is perfect for me. What is a futuristic or imaginative element in a book that you are glad is not real? And I am going to copy Rob's answer for this one and say alien invasion plots. I'm usually pretty happy aren't real. There's obviously a lot of books in science fiction that use an alien invasion plot, but the one that stands out to me is The Last Astronaut by David Wellington, which I read earlier this year, kind of knowing that if the astronauts don't succeed, Earth is going to be doomed. The book really relays that, and after reading it, I definitely was happy that this book wasn't real. But I also want to talk about the flip side. I think it's easy for science fiction to expose fears, but there's also a lot of hope for the future too in science fiction. So something in a science fiction book I wish was real is the exact opposite. I wish that we were peacefully integrated with aliens, and I'm gonna cite Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series because there's many times in the books I'm like, this sounds great. I wish I was living in this world. Just the cultural flow of ideas. I'm definitely not gonna I'm probably not gonna live to see it. And it's probably a lot of optimism to think that we could peacefully live with aliens, but that's something I really like about science fiction. The next prompt is horror, which I don't really read too much of, but I do read science fiction that incorporates horror into their plots. Reading, what has been the scariest moment for you reading a book? Again, The Last Astronaut definitely freaks me out at times. I read a lot at night. It's the final thing I do in the day is I usually take the last hour and a half or so just to read. While I was reading that book, I remember like putting it down at some point and I'm ready to, start getting ready for bed, and I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have read that tonight. It is getting, I was starting to see things in shadows. But I also want to cite Alyx and AI's Guide to Love and Murder. That book definitely conveyed some horror in it, and that one I was absolutely glued to, trying to see if our heroes were going to make it out alive. That was less fear of aliens and more fear of technology, and given power and control to technology and having that sacrifice your own autonomy, really conceptualized it well. Next prompt is for fantasy, which I was trying to think of what was the last fantasy book I read. I haven't read any this year, but I did read a couple last year. This question is, what would you import from a fantasy world into our own world? So again, I don't read too much fantasy. I imagine for high fantasy, there's probably lots of great answers for this. I just can't get interested in it myself. And even the fantasy that I choose to read, I'm thinking the last fantasy book I read was probably Hemlock Grove. And while I really like the way they did werewolves in that book, I don't want that book to be real. It was intense and scary. So I'm thinking more childhood oriented. I did read Sea of Trolls last year, which I totally dropped the ball on talking about my reads last year at a point. But the story on that was I had first bought it, I think for like $2 at the book fair when I was a child. I remember being so excited to get this book, but it just kind of sat on my shelf for years and years and years. And while I have weaned out most of my childhood reads from my bookshelf, I always held on to The Sea of Trolls because I just wanted to read it someday. So last year I finally just said, fuck it, I'm gonna read it. And I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I would have really liked it as a kid. I kind of regret not reading it when I was the appropriate age for it because I think I would totally love it. So the one thing from that book that I would want to be in our world is one of the characters gains the ability to talk to birds. And what I liked about that plot, and this is a minor spoiler, but again, this is a children's book and I don't really think I have kids watching me. And the way the character gets this power is that she ends up accidentally drinking dragon's blood. Pretty much they were fighting the dragon and some landed in her mouth. One of the details I loved about this scene is that the dragon's blood was like boiling hot and it burned her mouth at first, and at first she couldn't talk at all, and then she suddenly realizes that she can communicate with this bird companion they've had since the beginning of the adventure. And I just thought that was a really cool storyline, and yeah, I think that would be a fun power to have. On the flip side of this, because I did that for science fiction, something from fantasy I wouldn't want to exist is giant spiders, which was also in Sea of Trolls, and it seems to be in a lot of fantasy. I don't know what's up with giant spiders in fantasy, but not a fan. Comic and manga. What is a comic you enjoyed or one you have wanted to check out? I don't read too much comics anymore, and I pretty much had a huge manga and anime phase from the ages 10 to 14, and after I got it out of my system, I just I can't get into any new series. I pretty much will only revisit the ones I liked in that time of my life for nostalgia's sake, and I do really enjoy the animes and mangas I consumed back then, but I just can't get into anything new, so I'm gonna focus more on comics. I think the last comic I read was the graphic novelization of The Adventure Zone, which is a podcast where a couple of brothers play D&D with their dad, and it's really great. You should check it out. But I think my favorite comic I read was The Wicked and the Divine. It's about the cycle of gods from various cultures being reincarnated into humans, and these humans, in the true nature of being gods, need to be worshipped and idolized. So in modern times, these god reincarnations always seem to gravitate towards celebrity positions, and so in this world, pretty much a handful of celebrities are actually gods, and for some reason they've been dying off. I think they get 5 years or something once they ascend to godhood, and then they end up dying off. So really cool concept. The artwork is amazing. A lot of the characters are modeled after various icons from our world. Amatsuru kind of looks like Florence Welch, and Odin looks like Daft Punk with the mask on and all techno music. It also was the first comic and only comic I've really seen that has a lot of good representation with both POC and LGBT identities. So really cool comic book, definitely check it out. And I would say that is the comic I want to check out most as well, because where I left off in the story, I remember it was a huge plot twist, and I haven't read since, and it's been a couple years, I think, so I gotta catch up with that one. Literary fiction and classics. What is a classic book that you've been meaning to get into but haven't yet? I have a lot. I think I've been doing a lot of 2021 reads this year, but I might set a month aside just to go through some of my like classics I've been accumulating. But the one that stands out to me is I have both The Time Machine and War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, because like that is like a classic essential for science fiction. I think there's a lot to learn and appreciate about that, so I've been meaning to get to both of those. The Busy Bee. What book would you like to share with your friends? I love to lend my books out to friends, but this question varies from friend to friend. As an overall statement, I really want everyone to get into the Wayfarer series just because I need someone to talk to them about. But yeah, other than that, it varies from person to person. For like my girlfriend China, like I really want her to read Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, because the whole plot of Grace just graduating school and not knowing what to do, that's something that China went through, and I mean she's back in school now, but I just think it would help her. For my best friend Killian, I think I would recommend All the Birds in the Skies by Charlie Jane Anders, and I did lend it to them. They just gotta read it. And that book is like a marriage between the genre of science fiction and fantasy, but I think the fantasy elements in particular stand out to me. It just seems like something that would be totally up Killian's alley, with just like urban magic and the magic school Patricia goes to. It's such a cool take. It has Hogwarts beat by like a landslide, and the author isn't transphobic because the author is trans, so yeah. And then for my friend Annalisa, she works in social justice and reads a lot of like social commentary, historical reads and stuff like that, and so I think she would like An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon, which is a science fiction, but there is so much like social commentary on it, especially with racism and a little bit of gender too. I thought it was such a fascinating read, and I think she would like it, though it is kind of grim, and I appreciate that a lot of her job is really heavy and she might not be in the mood to read something heavy. Influencer. If you could have influenced an author to make a different decision in a book, what would it have been? Book keywords in a book, or else I would say, like in real life, to Joe Rowling, just stop. But in a book, decisions, for both The Last Astronaut and Illumini by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, both of those killed off a character that I don't think deserved it. I can appreciate why it happened, but I just kind of got attached to certain characters in both books, and I really wanted them to have a happier ending than they received. The birthday wish. What book do you want for your birthday? I'm taking this as like, what is the perfect gift for my book-obsessed self? Honestly, just take me to a bookstore and let me pick something out. I swear that would be the best gift ever. Otherwise, just buy me whatever your favorite book is, or whatever your favorite recent read was. I think that is such a sweet gift, and it kind of lets us connect on a little bit more of a personal level. So not really an answer for a specific book, but that's what I would like for a present if for some reason you're getting me a present. And lastly, the invite. Who are you inviting to your booktube party? Tag some friends to share cake with. Obviously, I'm gonna say my book buddies, who I've been doing reading sprints with lately. Tiffany at Beach Bum Bookworm, Tiffany at Masquerade Chick, Kristen at Moonlight Books, Jessica at Lovestead Reads, and Johar at Secret Books. I always enjoy us hanging out to do our reading sprints, and you are also invited to my booktube party. Have some cake. Well, that's about it for me today. If any of you see this and you want to do the tag as well, consider yourself tagged and make sure you share the video with me. You can tweet me at Twitter at SpicyMisoRobin, not ramen, and I'd be more than happy to watch your video as well. Thank you.